The year was 2387, and humanity had finally earned its place among the stars. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance watching the holographic display flicker to life with an incoming transmission. The alien figure that appeared was unlike anything in the galactic database. It was tall and crystalline, with faceted eyes that seemed to hold the weight of worlds. Jake had seen many alien species during his 15 years of service, but this one made his skin crawl. There was something desperate in those crystal eyes that reminded him of a cornered animal. Captain Lisa Chang stood beside him, her hand resting on her weapon out of habit. She had the same feeling that something was very wrong. The alien spoke through the universal translators that had made galactic communication possible. Its voice was like wind chimes in a storm. "I am Ambassador Kethral of the Valderan Collective. We come to you not as conquerors or traitors, but as the desperate. Our worlds burn under the assault of the Nexus Swarm, and our fleets lie broken in the void." Lisa raised an eyebrow and looked at Jake. The Valdorans were known throughout the galaxy as one of the most advanced civilizations. Their technology made most species look like children playing with sticks and stones. If they were asking for help, the situation was worse than anything Jake could imagine. The holographic display shifted to show scenes of destruction that made both humans step back. Entire planets covered in writhing metallic flesh. Ships, the size of cities being torn apart and rebuilt into nightmarish hybrids. Space itself seemed to be infected with some kind of living darkness that consumed everything it touched. "The swarm consumes everything," Kethral continued, and his crystalline form trembled like he was fighting not to break apart. "They learn and adapt and grow stronger with each world they devour. 17 star systems have fallen in the past month. We have tried everything. Plasma bombardments that can melt moons. Quantum disruptors that tear holes in reality. Even reality-warping weapons that bend the laws of physics. Nothing stops them." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. He had fought in the Centauri Wars and seen what modern weapons could do to planets. If technology that advanced couldn't stop this threat, then humanity was looking at something beyond their understanding. Admiral Kate Phillips materialized via hologram from Earth Command. Her weathered face bore the scars of a dozen conflicts, and her eyes held the cold calculation that had made humanity feared across 3 sectors. She wore her uniform like armor and spoke with the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. "Ambassador, with all due respect, why come to us? Humans are still considered a young species by galactic standards. We have been in space for less than 400 years while your people have traveled the stars for millennia." The alien's laugh was like breaking glass, and it sent shivers through both Jake and Lisa. "Young, perhaps, but you are the only species in known history to turn a liability into an advantage. While others perfect their technologies, you perfect your capacity for violence. While we build ships of beauty and efficiency, you build ships designed for one purpose: to kill and keep killing until nothing remains." Jake exchanged glances with Lisa. It was true that human military doctrine differed from other species in ways that made galactic diplomats uncomfortable. Where aliens sought elegant solutions, humans embraced brutal efficiency. Where others built defenses, humans built weapons that could crack planets in half. The ambassador continued, and his voice grew more desperate with each word. "We have studied your military history. Your species has never truly known peace. Even when not fighting others, you fight among yourselves. War is not just something you do. It is something you are. You understand violence in ways that we cannot comprehend." Admiral Phillips leaned forward in her hologram. "What exactly are you asking of us, Ambassador? Speak plainly." Ketheral's form flickered as if he was struggling to maintain his composure. "We offer our complete technological database. Every advancement we have made over 10,000 years of civilization. Our most advanced worlds as bases of operation. 40% of our remaining fleet under complete human command. manufacturing facilities that can build ships faster than any human shipyard. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of machinery. Jake could feel the weight of the moment. This was an offer beyond anything humanity had ever received. Technology that could advance their civilization by centuries. Resources that could make them the dominant power in the galaxy. In return, the ambassador said, and his voice dropped to barely above a whisper, "We ask that humanity do what you do best. Wage war without mercy, without restraint, and without the moral limitations that have prevented us from stopping this threat. We need you to be what other species fear you already are." Phillips nodded slowly, and Jake could see the wheels turning in her mind. "We will need to see the tactical situation first. Commander Morrison, prepare your task force for immediate deployment to Valderan space. Full battle readiness. And Morrison, bring the heavy packages." Jake smiled grimly. By heavy packages, the Admiral meant the experimental weapons that had been deemed too dangerous for standard deployment. Weapons that violated several galactic treaties and existed in black sites that officially did not exist. If the galaxy's most advanced civilization was asking humans to unleash their full potential, then this Nexus swarm was about to learn why. Humanity had never lost a war. Lisa moved to her station and began plotting jump coordinates to Valderan space. "Sir, the nearest Valderan system is 6 days away at maximum hyperspace velocity. Should I alert the other task force commanders?" "Do it," Jake replied. "And Lisa, make sure they understand this is not a standard deployment. Tell them to bring everything. The experimental ships, the prototype weapons, the things we swore we would never use unless the survival of humanity was at stake." As the transmission ended and Kethral's desperate image faded, Jake looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there was a threat so terrible that the most advanced civilization in the galaxy was begging humanity to save them. They were offering everything they had built over millennia in exchange for human brutality. Jake had spent his career trying to prove that humanity could be more than just efficient killers, that they could build and explore and create as well as any species in the galaxy. Now it seemed that their salvation lay not in transcending their violent nature, but in embracing it completely. The stars looked different now, less like points of light representing hope and exploration, and more like targets waiting to be destroyed. War was coming, and humanity would answer the call as they always had, with overwhelming force and a willingness to do whatever it took to win. The hunt was about to begin. 3 days later, the UES Vengeance dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Kepler 442 system. What had once been a thriving Valdoran colony world now served as a nightmare that defied human understanding. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, staring at the main display, while his crew worked in tense silence around him. The planet's surface crawled with a metallic organic substance that pulsed with malevolent life. It looked like someone had poured liquid metal across the world and then brought it to life. Massive biomechanical constructs swarmed through space like locusts. Their hulls incorporated technology from dozens of different species welded together in ways that should not have worked, but clearly did. Captain Lisa Chang moved to stand beside Jake, her face pale as she studied the sensor readings. "Sir, I'm counting over 300 individual constructs in orbit. Some of them are the size of our heavy cruisers. And that thing in the center, at the heart of the swarm, was something that defied classification. Part ship and part creature it was, the size of a small moon. Its surface rippled with organic movement, while weapons ports opened and closed like breathing. Tentacles that looked like they were made of living metal reached out to connect with smaller vessels. The sight made Jake's stomach turn. "Lieutenant." Bobby Hughes called out from the sensor station, his voice shaking slightly. "Sir, I'm reading energy signatures from at least 12 different species. It's like they're harvesting technology and biology at the same time." Some of these readings match Valdoran crystal technology, but others are completely unknown. Dr. Emma Watson, the fleet's xenobiologist, studied the readings with a mixture of fascination and horror. She had spent 20 years studying alien life forms, but nothing had prepared her for this. They're not just consuming, Commander, they're integrating. Look at these biosignatures. That's Valdoran crystal technology fused with Zephyrian neural networks and something else I don't recognize. Jake felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's climate control. Could that be human technology, Doctor? Emma's face went white as she cross-referenced the readings with known human signatures. 3 months ago, the exploration vessel UES Pioneer was lost in this sector. All hands, 47 souls. Sir, if they consumed that ship and learned from it. The implications hung in the air like a toxic cloud. If the swarm could learn from human technology and adapt it to their own purposes, then humanity's advantages might already be compromised. Everything that made human ships and weapons effective could now be turned against them. A new holographic display activated showing Admiral Kate Phillips alongside Ambassador Kethrall. Behind them, the war room of the UES Olympus buzzed with activity as human strategists analyzed enemy formations. Maps covered every surface, and junior officers moved between stations carrying data tablets and looking grim. Kethrall's crystalline form had dimmed since their last communication. The swarm learns from everything it consumes. They now possess human tactical knowledge, Valdoran energy weapons, Thraxian armor plating, and the reproductive capabilities of the Hive Queens from the Andromeda sector. Each victory makes them exponentially more dangerous. General Ryan Clark, commander of the Human Expeditionary Marines, appeared on screen still wearing battle-scarred armor from his latest operation. His face bore the marks of recent combat, and his eyes held the cold fury of a professional soldier who had seen too much death. So we can't give them anything new to learn from. Every engagement has to be decisive. No retreats, no survivors on their side, no new technology for them to analyze and integrate. Admiral Phillips activated a holographic display that made everyone on the bridge step back in amazement. The display revealed the true scope of humanity's response, and it was beyond anything Jake had imagined possible. That's why we're not sending a fleet. We're sending an extinction event. 12 carrier groups, each built around the massive Apocalypse-class dreadnoughts, appeared on the tactical display. These were ships designed for one purpose: to destroy entire fleets and keep fighting until nothing remained. 400 destroyer escorts equipped with experimental antimatter torpedoes followed behind them. Their sleek hulls were built for speed and killing power. 200 stealth frigates carrying planet-killer missiles moved in formation that defied detection by conventional sensors, and at the center of it all was the UES Ragnarok, a ship so dangerous that its mere existence was classified at levels above Jake's security clearance. Phillips continued her briefing, and her voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The Valdorans are giving us complete tactical control of this operation. Their fleets will serve as support and reconnaissance assets. Our objective is simple: total annihilation of the swarm, regardless of cost to ourselves or surrounding systems. Commander Nick Foster, captain of the UES Retribution, studied the tactical data with the practiced eye of a veteran ship commander. Admiral, what about civilian populations in the affected systems? Our intelligence suggests there may still be survivors on some of the outer worlds. Kethrall's form darkened, and his voice carried pain that transcended species boundaries. Commander, there are no civilians anymore. The swarm doesn't take prisoners or spare the innocent. It converts everything into more of itself. Every person, every ship, every world that falls becomes part of their collective consciousness. Mercy is not just pointless in this situation. It's actively harmful because any survivors become weapons against us. Jake nodded grimly as the full horror of their situation became clear. This wasn't war, as humanity had traditionally understood it. There would be no prisoners to exchange, no civilians to protect, no territory to occupy. This was pure survival, against an enemy that viewed all biological and technological life as raw materials for expansion. Admiral Phillips looked directly at Jake through the holographic display. "Commander Morrison, what are your rules of engagement for this operation?" Jake straightened to full attention. "Ma'am, we need clear guidance on acceptable levels of force and collateral damage." Phillips smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "There are no rules, Commander. Use every weapon, every tactic, every advantage we have available. Deploy the Nova bombs if necessary. Glass entire star systems if it means stopping them from spreading further. Because if we fail here, they'll learn how to kill like humans, and then nothing in this galaxy will be able to stop them." As the briefing ended, Jake looked out at the assembled fleet through the tactical displays. Hundreds of human warships, each one a testament to their species' singular talent for destruction. They had been asked to do what they did best, and Jake knew they would not disappoint their alien allies. The hunt was about to begin, and the galaxy would never be the same. The battle began at 600 hours Galactic Standard Time in the ruins of the Altair 7 system. Commander Jake Morrison's advance force dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 40 destroyers arranged in a sphere around 5 heavy cruisers, with the UES Vengeance at the center. The formation had been practiced 1,000 times, but never against an enemy like this. Lieutenant Ashley Brooks called out from the tactical station, her voice steady, despite the magnitude of what they faced. "Contact bearing 347 Mark 85. Multiple bogeys, sir. Holy hell, there's hundreds of them." The main display lit up with enemy contacts that defied every rule of ship design that humanity had learned. The swarm vessels were nightmarish fusions of organic curves and mechanical angles. Some incorporated the elegant lines of Valdoran crystal ships, while others bore the brutal efficiency of human destroyer hulls. Still more showed the chitinous armor of species Jake didn't recognize. What made his blood run cold was seeing human design elements welded into alien constructs. The nose section of what looked like a human frigate had been grafted onto a biomechanical horror 3 times its size. Weapon ports that matched human specifications opened along organic hulls that pulsed like living tissue. Captain Lisa Chang moved to her battle station as alarms began sounding throughout the ship. "Sir, they're using our own technology against us. Those energy signatures match human plasma cannons, but they've been integrated into biological systems." Jake gripped his command chair as the enemy formation began to move. The swarm ships didn't fly like normal vessels. They writhed through space like living things using tentacles and biomechanical thrusters that shouldn't have worked, but clearly did. "All ships weapons free. Remember the mission briefing. Nothing survives to report back to the main hive." The human fleet opened fire with coordinated precision that had been drilled into them through years of training. Plasma cannons designed to melt through asteroid belts struck swarm vessels, while quantum torpedoes tore holes in reality itself. The initial barrage should have destroyed half the enemy force, but the swarm adapted with terrifying speed. Chief Engineering Officer Dan Carter watched his displays in growing alarm. "Sir, they're modifying their shields in real time. They've analyzed our weapon signatures, and they're already compensating. Their hull armor is literally rebuilding itself to counter our plasma charges." On the main screen, they could see swarm ships sprouting additional armor plating that looked identical to human composite steel. Weapon ports were closing and reforming in new configurations. The enemy was learning and adapting faster than any computer system humanity had ever created. Lisa pointed to a cluster of enemy vessels that had begun glowing with an ominous energy. "Sir, they're not just defending. They're preparing to return fire with weapons that match our own specifications." Jake made a decision that went against every rule of conventional warfare. "All ships execute Pattern Omega immediately." Pattern Omega was a human invention that had been banned by most galactic civilizations. It was a tactic so vicious that even human military commanders were reluctant to use it. Every ship in the fleet simultaneously fired their antimatter reserves, not at the enemy ships, but at the star itself. The stellar disruption caused massive solar flares that swept across the system in minutes. Valderan's ships, with their advanced shielding, weathered the storm easily. The human vessels had been designed specifically to survive such conditions. But the swarm vessels, caught off guard by an attack that targeted the entire system rather than individual ships, were caught completely unprepared. Direct hit on the primary swarm cluster, Brooks reported as the solar storm tore through enemy formations. "We've eliminated approximately 60% of their forces, sir." But the celebration was short-lived. The surviving swarm ships began to glow with the same ominous energy they had seen before. New vessels began emerging from what remained of the consumed planet below. They were using the solar radiation as an energy source to rebuild their losses. Dr. Emma Watson studied the readings from her science station with growing horror. "They're rebuilding themselves using the solar flares as raw energy. Commander, they're not just adapting to our weapons. They're turning our own attacks into fuel for reproduction." Admiral Phillips's voice crackled over the communications array, with static from the ongoing solar storm. "All task forces, this is Olympus Command. We have observed the enemy's adaptive capabilities firsthand. I am now authorizing Protocol 7. Repeat, Protocol 7 is now in effect." Jake smiled coldly as he heard the authorization code. Protocol 7 meant the gloves were coming off completely. Every weapon that humanity had deemed too dangerous for normal use was now authorized. "All ships fall back to Rally Point Alpha. It's time to show them what humans really bring to the table." As the human fleet withdrew from the system, massive hyperspace rifts began opening throughout local space. From them emerged ships that made Jake's previous fleet look like patrol boats. The UES Ragnarok led a formation of 30 dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying entire fleets. Behind them came something that made even Jake's veteran crew gasp in amazement. The UES Worldbreaker was a ship so large it had its own gravitational field. Its weapons were designed to crack the crust of planets, and its mere presence warped space around it. Admiral Phillips' voice came through the communications system from the bridge of the Ragnarok. "Swarm entities, you have demonstrated the ability to learn and use our technology. Now you will learn to die by it." The second wave of the human assault began with weapons that existed only in theoretical physics textbooks. Reality bombs that erased matter from existence, leaving nothing but empty space. Temporal torpedoes that aged their targets to dust in seconds. Gravity cannons that created miniature black holes that consumed everything around them. The swarm tried desperately to adapt to these new weapons. They tried to learn and integrate the new technologies, but human military doctrine had one principle that no other species in the galaxy shared. If you can't outthink your enemy, then out-escalate them until thinking becomes irrelevant. As Admiral, Phillips prepared to fire the Nova Cannon. Jake realized they had crossed a line that no civilization should cross. They were about to trigger the collapse of an entire star system. But as he watched the swarm vessels still trying to adapt and learn from weapons that defied the laws of physics, he knew they had no choice. The war for the galaxy's survival had truly begun, and humanity would use every weapon at their disposal to win. 6 months into the conflict, the war had evolved into something unprecedented in galactic history. The Nexus swarm had consumed 14 star systems, but their expansion had slowed dramatically as they encountered humanity's escalating response. What had begun as a desperate plea for help had become a grinding war of attrition that was reshaping the galaxy itself. Aboard the mobile command station, UES Olympus Admiral Kate Phillips reviewed the strategic situation with her staff. The massive vessel served as both headquarters and fortress, moving through space with an escort of 200 warships. Its war room displayed a 3-dimensional map of the conflict zone, with red indicating swarm territory, blue showing human Valdoran-controlled space, and contested zones marked in purple. The map told a story of unprecedented destruction. Entire Star systems had been reduced to debris fields. Planets that had existed for billions of years were now nothing but expanding clouds of radioactive dust. The scale of devastation made even hardened military officers uncomfortable. Colonel Amy, Rodriguez, head of military intelligence, stepped forward with her daily briefing. She wore the tired expression of someone who had been analyzing horror for months without rest. Admiral, the swarm has adapted to our conventional weapons, but they're struggling with our asymmetric tactics. General Clark's Marine insertion teams have successfully destroyed 12 hive nodes from within using suicide missions. General Ryan Clark, still wearing battle-scarred armor from his latest ground operation, nodded grimly. His face bore fresh scars, and his left arm was in a medical brace. The key is hitting them before they can analyze and integrate our technology. My Marines are using weapons that self-destruct after firing, plasma charges that burn out their own components, biological weapons that dissolve after deployment. We're fighting them with equipment designed to destroy itself. Admiral Phillips studied the tactical displays showing the locations of recent human victories. Each success had come at enormous cost in both lives and resources. What about the Nova campaign's Colonel Rodriguez? Commander Jake Morrison, recently promoted to Fleet Tactical Coordinator, highlighted several star systems on the holographic map. The systems glowed with the angry red light of dying stars. We've successfully collapsed 4 stars in swarm-controlled territory. The tactic is effective at denying them resources, but it's taking a toll on our own forces. We're essentially committing genocide on a stellar scale, Admiral. The room fell silent as the implications of Morrison's words sank in. Humanity had crossed moral boundaries that other species couldn't even imagine. They were destroying entire solar systems to prevent the swarm from using them as breeding grounds. Dr. Emma Watson spoke up from her position at the science station. Her research had shifted from studying alien biology to developing more effective ways to kill it. The psychological warfare component is working, Admiral. Intercepted swarm communications show they're confused by our willingness to destroy strategic assets. They can't adapt to tactics that eliminate the battlefield itself. Ambassador Kethrall, now permanently stationed aboard the Olympus, observed the discussions with a mixture of admiration and horror. His crystalline form had grown dimmer over the months as he witnessed humanity's approach to warfare. Your species continues to astound us, Admiral. The swarm has faced thousands of civilizations over millennia, but none that would sacrifice their own strategic advantages to deny them to the enemy. Phillips leaned back in her command chair and studied the alien diplomat. That's because other species fight to win, Ambassador. Humans fight to ensure the enemy loses completely. There's a fundamental difference in philosophy that makes us effective against opponents like the swarm. Captain Nick Foster, commanding the Stealth Operations Group, brought up new intelligence data on his personal display. His ships had been conducting deep reconnaissance missions into swarm territory for weeks. Admiral, we've identified what appears to be the swarm's central command node. It's a structure the size of a small planet located in the Vega system. Our deep reconnaissance indicates it contains the original consciousness that controls the entire collective. Phillips studied the tactical data with the practiced eye of someone who had spent decades planning military operations. The structure was protected by thousands of swarm vessels and defensive installations that incorporated the best technology from dozens of consumed civilizations. A direct assault would require sacrificing most of the human fleet. "Recommendations, Commander Morrison?" she asked. Morrison stepped forward with a proposal that would have horrified earlier generations of military leaders. "Admiral, we've been fighting this war like a conventional conflict. We're trying to destroy their forces and capture territory. But the swarm isn't a conventional enemy. It's more like a virus that has infected the galaxy. You don't defeat a virus by fighting its symptoms." Dr. Watson looked up from her research station with interest. "Are you suggesting biological warfare, Commander?" Morrison smiled with an expression that contained no warmth whatsoever. "I'm suggesting we give them exactly what they want, Doctor. They learn by consuming technology and integrating it into their collective. So we create something specifically for them to consume, something that will tear them apart from within. Phillips understood immediately, and her expression grew calculating. A Trojan horse. You want to let them capture one of our ships deliberately. Morrison nodded and began outlining his plan. Not just any ship, Admiral. We build something special. We pack it with technology they'll desperately want to integrate. But every system, every weapon, every piece of technology is designed to turn the swarm's own adaptive capabilities against them. General Clark leaned forward with professional interest. It would have to be convincing, Commander. They've learned to be suspicious of gifts after 6 months of fighting us. Morrison's smile grew darker. Then we make it cost us something, General. We stage a massive battle. We let them win. We let them capture what appears to be our most advanced vessel. They'll tear it apart to learn from it, and when they do, the real weapon activates. Dr. Watson began to understand the implications. The virus spreads through their entire network. We turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Phillips stood and addressed the entire command staff. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to attempt something that has never been tried in the history of galactic warfare. We're going to weaponize their own evolution against them. This plan will require sacrificing good people and ships to make it convincing. As the meeting broke up and the participants returned to their stations, Morrison couldn't shake the feeling that they were crossing a line that no species should cross. But then he remembered the 14 star systems that no longer existed and the billions of beings converted into swarm biomass. His resolve hardened like steel. Humanity had been asked to wage war without mercy or restraint. They were about to discover just how far humans were willing to go to achieve total victory. 3 weeks later, the most audacious military deception in galactic history began to unfold in the Rigel system. The UES Pandora limped through space-trailing atmosphere and debris from what appeared to be catastrophic battle damage. Commander, Lisa Chang had volunteered for what everyone understood was essentially a suicide mission to save the galaxy. The Pandora had been constructed specifically for this operation. Every system aboard the vessel functioned perfectly despite appearances. The damage was cosmetic but convincing. Atmosphere leaked from carefully placed breaches. Debris scattered in patterns that suggested a ship barely holding together after a devastating battle. Chang broadcast desperate distress signals on open channels, knowing the swarm would intercept every transmission. This is Commander Chang to any human vessels in the area. The fleet is destroyed. Repeat, Admiral Phillips is dead and the Ragnarok has been eliminated. I'm the only survivor. The new weapon prototype didn't work as planned. Her voice carried genuine fear because she knew the implications of what would follow if their plan failed. 50 volunteer crew members had joined her aboard the Pandora. All of them understood they were unlikely to survive the next few hours. Aboard the UES Olympus, hidden beyond the system's edge, Commander Jake Morrison watched through stealth drones as the swarm took the bait. Dozens of biomechanical ships emerged from hyperspace and surrounded the apparently crippled vessel. Their scanning beams probed every inch of the Pandora looking for threats, and finding only what appeared to be a broken ship with valuable technology. Lieutenant Bobby Hughes monitored the enemy approach from his sensor station. Sir, they're buying the deception completely. Swarm vessels are moving into capture formation exactly as we predicted. Dr. Emma Watson observed the biological warfare package, hidden within the Pandora's core systems. Months of research had gone into creating the perfect virus, something that would appear to be advanced human technology while actually being designed to destroy the swarm from within. The payload remains stable, sir. Once they begin integration, we estimate 6 hours before it spreads to their primary network. Admiral Kate Phillips commanded the operation from the bridge of the real Ragnarok, hidden with the rest of the human fleet in a nearby nebula. Her voice carried absolute authority as she coordinated the largest deception in military history. All fleet elements maintain stealth positions. Do not react regardless of what happens to the Pandora crew. Wait for my signal before engaging. The swarm boarding action was swift and thorough. Biomechanical entities swarmed through the Pandoras, corridors cataloging every piece of technology they discovered. Chang and her volunteer crew put up a convincing fight before allowing themselves to be overwhelmed by superior numbers. As swarm technicians began dissecting the ship's systems, they discovered what appeared to be humanity's most closely guarded secrets. Advanced AI cores that seemed decades ahead of current technology, quantum processing nodes that defied known physics, weapons systems that incorporated principles the swarm had never encountered. Morrison watched the integration process begin, as swarm vessels physically connected to the Pandora with biomechanical tendrils. They're taking the bait completely. Dr. Watson, how long until we know if the virus is working? Watson monitored her displays with growing excitement and terror. The virus is designed to remain dormant until it reaches critical mass within their network. Based on our computer models, it should achieve full saturation in approximately 4 hours. But as time passed, something unexpected began happening. The swarm ships connecting to the Pandora started exhibiting erratic behavior patterns. Rather than simply consuming the technology, they appeared to be fighting some kind of internal conflict. Hughes called out in alarm from his sensor station. "Sir, I'm reading massive energy fluctuations from the swarm vessels. It's like they're experiencing some kind of system failure across their entire network." On the tactical display, they could see swarm ships turning their weapons on each other without apparent reason. Biomechanical entities that had been working in perfect coordination suddenly began attacking their own companions. The orderly hive mind was dissolving into chaos. Watson reported with amazement as her readings confirmed what they were witnessing. "The virus is working ahead of schedule, sir. But it's not just disrupting their integration processes. It's causing a complete cascade failure in their collective consciousness." Throughout swarm territory, the infection spread faster than anyone had predicted. The virus turned the swarm's greatest strength against them. Their interconnected consciousness that had made them nearly invincible became the pathway for their own destruction. The swarm command node in the Vega system began broadcasting frantic signals as chaos spread through their network. Ships throughout. Their territory stopped their advance and began attacking each other. The collective that had consumed 14 star systems was tearing itself apart from within. Admiral Phillips gave the final order that would end the war. "All fleets execute final phase. Hit them while they're fragmenting. Show no mercy." Human armada decloaked around every major swarm position simultaneously. But instead of finding organized resistance, they encountered scattered, confused remnants of what had once been an unstoppable force. The battle that followed was less a military engagement than a cleanup operation. Swarm vessels with their coordination destroyed and their adaptive capabilities turned against them fell to human weapons with unprecedented ease. What had taken months to achieve through massive battles was accomplished in hours through biological warfare. In the command center of the dying swarm node, the original consciousness that had started the plague across the galaxy screamed its rage into space, before finally falling silent forever. The threat that had consumed worlds and terrorized civilizations was ended not by superior firepower, but by humanity's willingness to weaponize the enemy's own nature. When the last swarm vessel was destroyed, a profound quiet settled over the galaxy. The war was over, but the cost had been beyond calculation. Entire star systems had been sacrificed, billions of lives lost. The moral boundaries that had governed galactic civilization had been shattered. Ambassador Kethral stood beside Admiral Phillips as they surveyed the aftermath of humanity's victory. 17 star systems consumed and trillions of beings lost. You stopped them by teaching them to destroy themselves. Your species has shown the galaxy the true meaning of total warfare. Phillips nodded grimly as she looked out at the debris, fields that had once been swarm fleets. The swarm asked the wrong question, Ambassador. They wondered how to defeat humanity in battle. They should have asked what we were willing to become to ensure their complete destruction. As the human fleet began the long journey home, Morrison understood they had won more than just a war. They had established humanity's place in the galactic order forever. Not as conquerors or liberators, but as the species you called when civilization itself faced extinction. The galaxy would remember that when aliens asked for help, humans had sent the deadliest fleet ever assembled. But they would also remember that sometimes the deadliest weapon wasn't a ship or bomb or virus. Sometimes it was simply the willingness to use them all without hesitation or mercy.